Hello and welcome back to Grow Joyfully. I hope you're having a great Saturday, April 6th, getting a lot done either in the greenhouse, the house, or out in the garden if you're able. We woke up to 3 inches of snow this morning, so needless to say, we've been in the house and the greenhouse. This isn't completely unexpected, it's just not real typical, let's just put it that way. But I'm still potting up. I've got gold medal and large red round cherry plants to pot up. I was concerned about some of the plants and some of the soil. It's easy for them to get root bound. This is what that looks like. So we will just put this in the compost. I repotted up the plant and I'm sure it's going to feel a lot better, especially with more perlite in the potting mix to provide more drainage. So we'll have to see how they feel and how they look. Like this plant right here has too much peat moss in the mix. It's not draining well and it is not happy. So I'm going to repot this, mix it in with more perlite and potting mix and not peat moss. So we'll have to see how that goes. I'll be back as soon as I get this one potted up. While I'm doing that, I wanted to point out how, do you see how this is just falling apart? And there are very few roots. That's what's happening with the soil mix that has far too much peat moss in it. You learn something new every year, every day. You don't necessarily want to have a straight potting mix without some more drainage in it. Some of the potting mix we got has so many little sticks and branches in it. So I've been striving for the right mixture, but this I got too heavy on the peat moss. And it's just not even putting down very long roots. So that is something to keep in mind. It's going to take a while for this tomato plant to respond to its new and better environment, but I think its environment looks so much better already. It's got so much more drainage and it just looks healthier. I like to observe the plants that are getting quite big and looking pretty good. This one has that really barky mixture. I would assume that it is providing a lot of drainage for the potting mix. So these people used some perlite in it, a lot smaller, and then quite a bit of this little bark mulch here. But this is getting big and green, looking quite healthy. It's by the window, so it's not looking purple. It's really quite tall. And I still have 4 weeks to 6 weeks before I can plant it out, especially with the snow that was on the ground this morning. So I think it's important that you look at your mix. Some is a little heavy on the peat moss, some is a little heavy on the bark mulch. So it's important to find the mix that suits you best, and hopefully it can be as organic as possible. I know that it's hard to do, to find an organic mix or maybe to afford it, but obviously your plants will do better if it doesn't have chemicals inside of it to deal with. So I'm pretty positive about this one and its mix. And even though it looks really dry, it has moisture down here farther. A lot of people water their plants, and I do too. I try to. I don't have deep enough trays to do that to all of them, but they try to water them from the bottom so the plant can take up what it naturally needs. These Kellogg's breakfast tomatoes needed to be transplanted in separate pots anyway, but again, this mixture has far too much potting soil, and that's my bad. So I'm going to tip these out and put them in their own pots with the better mixture that has more of the bark mulch and the perlite in it. I think that'll do it. We moved the growing lights up as far as we could get them on their shelf there, because as you can see, this plant right here getting super tall, and as these get bigger and bigger, they need more and more room to expand. Over here, sorry about the camera, this one right here, the pink brandywine, is now hitting the shelf above it, so I need to take that out and move it to a different space. That's one thing about growing your own seeds, is having enough space. Unless you're a commercial grower or you've got a really nice greenhouse setup, that's a very big greenhouse, you struggle for space. You struggle for timing, in that, when do I plant these early enough so that I don't miss extra weeks in the growing season, but will I run out of space trying to keep them all in a warmer place? So that's definitely a ticklish balance situation. By the way, I do not throw out the potting soil that I do not like the mixture of. I put it right back in this bin and mix it up, because I'm watching to make sure that it doesn't get too much potting, what is it called? Not getting too much peat moss, and the mixture still staying okay. Monty Don from Gardener's World says he saves his last year's soil in his pots that is spent, meaning it doesn't have any nutritional value, to grow herbs in, because that's the kind of soil they like. Extremely good drainage, lots of grit or perlite or whatever, and then not very much nutrition. That's how they thrive. I also use an organic 462 all-purpose fertilizer. Sometimes I use just a specific tomato fertilizer. This is obviously works for tomatoes. There's the picture. But this is organic, and it's OMRI listed, and OMRI means Organic Materials Review Institute, and it is safe and approved for organic farmers to use on their plants. So that's what I use for my fertilizer right now. I also use fish fertilizer, which works so well, but it's so stinky. But really, it does work really well. And I also make comfrey tea from my own comfrey that I grow that enriches the soil. I try to use banana peel, eggshell, blood meal, bone meal, and what else? A tiny bit of Epsom salt, which provides magnesium, and make up a little bit of a fertilizer on my own. So I just kind of test and try to find out what certain plants like, because every different variety of plant likes a different type of fertilizer. They use different things out of it. And at different times in its life, it needs different types of fertilizer. The number 4 is nitrogen. The number 6 is, I'm going to forget, I always do. And the number 2 is potash. Maybe that's the potassium. Or is it phosphorus? So hard to remember. All we have to do is flip it over, and it tells us all about it. And this, so it has nitrogen, phosphate, and potash. It also has calcium and magnesium and sulfur. And it is derived from fish bone meal, blood meal, fertilizer, feather, I don't have my glasses on, feather meal, alfalfa meal, rock phosphate, I'm not even going to try that, lang, binite, and kelp meal. I know that seaweed, fish fertilizer, kelp meal, all those things have a lot of nutrition in them for the plants, and they all add something to it. But like what I was going to say earlier, okay, here we go again down here. nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So the potassium is the potash. Phosphorus is the middle number. When the plants are growing, they need the nitrogen, this first number. When they're establishing their roots, they need this number. And then later on, when they bear fruit, they need this number, the potash or the potassium. So it's quite interesting when you get into it to try to learn what each thing does and what your plants need, but it's definitely worth it to have really great plants. So you see how weak and little the root system is for these plants that were in the potting mix that had a lot of peat moss in it. So we're just going to scoop up part of a cup. Then I put some of the fertilizer in, that all-purpose, with the 462 numbers that I showed you. And I mix it up. Poke a hole with my dibber. I did find out that it is called a dibber by the English. And I think I'm going to take off these lower leaves so it can grow more roots out and put more energy into this plant part and into the roots. Also, if I can reach over here without knocking the camera over, just going to give the roots a little drink. And Monty Don from Gardener's World says always water in your plants. You don't have to drown them, just make sure they get watered in so they can help get settled. So firm that up. Right now I am using these solo cups because we are running out of these. When you sell plants at plant sales and they are in these pots, well, the pot goes too. So we haven't been buying any pots at the store because I've been trying to grow all my own seedlings and plants. So after you get this in here, make sure you cut drainage holes in the bottom. It doesn't look like there are drainage holes there. A lot of people use, what's it called? A drill bit and cut it down in. I carefully cut holes like that, and I think it's enough drainage. Just be careful and cautious when you're cutting anything. So just fill it in more. We're going to have to get some more soil and perlite. Firm it up. And I'll have to make a tag up for it and water it in. A lot of people don't like to water from the top, and I understand that. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it works better to water from the bottom. And then there's less chance of getting disease on the leaves and hurting the plant. So there we go. A Kellogg's breakfast tomato plant. I like to put the date when it was first started, when I potted it up, and then here if I pot it up again, just so that I know in my head how long these things take. This has taken less than a month to get him to about that size. Anyway, it's the best way to go, the best way I found out to pot up plants. Gotta still watch that potting medium that you use and the fertilizer you use. And I hope you enjoyed this video and that it helped at all. Please come back again soon, and don't forget to grow joyfully. We'll see you next time.